We need some flair, we need some goals. Where are you going?
I'm going Diego.
I thought you
I think
might.
I'd be crazy not to. He's probably one of the best players I've ever played with. I don't know how Glory found him, but they did very
Amazing.
well.
You've offended people,
You
haven't
put
you?
your
This
foot
is
in
what
it
you've done.
Well, yeah, the banner's just totally different to what I'm used to, and you've got to be careful not to drop yourself in it. And every player has played for maybe 5 or 6 clubs, so it's not just the A-League where players are recycled.
2015, you'd been over in the UK. You'd been at Portsmouth and Macclesfield and Stoke as well.
If you can do it, fair play. I got to the point at 19, 20 where I had the realisation that I'm maybe not ready for that.
The motorbike.
Yeah, on a Harley or whatever it was in some budgies, and it obviously didn't go down well, did it? You always felt like you were on your toes, like you never really knew whether he liked you. One of those guys that if you're playing against him, you hate him.
Yeah.
You can't stand the guy, but when you're playing with him, he's great.
Yeah. Hi guys, Gareth Morgan here, welcoming you to Glory Story, the club's brand new official podcast, brought to you in association with our great friends at Drimtel. Now, we all know that essentially Perth Glory is a Netflix series just waiting to happen. So much drama over the years, pretty much ever since the club's inception back in 1996. We've had triumphs, we've had tragedies, we've had tantrums, a cast of remarkable characters, the heroes, the villains, the eccentrics as well, and to be honest, a sprinkling of lunatics on top. We've basically seen it all. And the purpose of Glory Stories is to really tell you the stories behind the stories, to drill right down deep into the core of this fantastic and slightly bonkers club that we all love so much. Now, to do that, we'll be catching up with as many key Glory characters as we possibly can. So past and present players and coaches, also administrators as well, members and fans. We are going to cast the net nice and wide. Now, basically, we have some other exciting features to tell you about as well, but I'll come to those shortly because it would be rather rude at this stage not to introduce you to our VIP guest who is joining us today. Now, in terms of the criteria for today's guest, we had a few boxes that we needed to tick. We needed someone who's a good talker, ideally someone with some podcast experience, someone who is still incredibly popular with our fan base as well. And then just from a personal point of view, when I found out that the podcast was actually going to be in video format, I just thought we needed somebody with a fine head of hair to provide that visual contrast with my own challenges in that particular area. So once we took all those factors into account, the arrow led very firmly in the direction of one man and one man only, Alex Grant. Grant, he's here. You're looking fantastic, Al. It's lovely to see you, mate. How's things?
Good, Gareth. Thanks very much for the introduction. Oh, mate, great to be here. Can't complain. And to be on the first episode, what a pleasure.
An absolute honour. We're delighted to have you, mate. It really is a pleasure. Now, let's start with the present. We will, of course, go back over your time with Glory shortly, but just bring us up to date with what is going on with you at the moment. How come you're in Perth right now?
Well, I've been playing in China over the last year. Not got too many games in over there, unfortunately, due to injury. So halfway through the season, the club made a decision to get me fixed up and ship me off back to Australia and go under the knife, and got sorted over in Sydney. Saw a surgeon over there, and I've completed my rehab here in Perth with a physio back here.
So the operation went well, the rehab's gone well?
Yeah, it's gone, pretty smooth sailing so far. Not too many mishaps. It's a groin issue that I've got and that I've battled with all year whilst I was playing over there. And yeah, so far so good. I'll get back into things in the next few weeks and fingers crossed I hold up. And I'm feeling pretty good. I'm pretty confident going back over there and that my body's going to hold up as it should.
No, fingers crossed, mate. So Tianjin is the club that you're at the moment. Can you just give us a little bit of an insight into the Chinese Super League? Obviously, you were in Korea very successfully for several years, and then you had the move over to China. What are the sort of main differences and similarities between the two competitions?
I think they're both very different. There's quality in both the leagues. The Korean league, I think, is a lot more dependent on the Korean players. There's not as many big-name foreign stars over there as there are in China. Especially in China, they seem to bring a lot of players from Europe and Brazil, as they do all over Asia. But what I've found is that both the leagues, pretty fast tempo, pretty physical as well. Both of them, players put themselves about pretty well. And I mean, it's just a different taste of football. It's always hard for me to compare because I've not played in the A-League for 5 years, so I feel like I'm always trying to compare it to that.
Yeah.
But the league's always evolving and always changing here as it is there. So every year is a little bit different, and yeah.
Now, you are someone who loves the banter in the changing rooms and just in general. How sort of restrictive has that been when you've been overseas?
Yeah, that's tough.
It is.
To be honest with you, the Koreans, I found, I don't know whether it was just the group I was in Pohang, but there was a few more English speakers there than there are in the dressing room in China. So I've definitely mingled a lot more with the foreigners, I would say, in China than I have done in Korea. But yeah, the banter's just totally different to what I'm used to, and you've got to be careful not to drop yourself in it. And one thing that's said can be taken completely the wrong way.
You've offended people, haven't you? This is what you've done.
That's it. Yeah, people are easily offended all over the world, aren't they? So you've just got to be very careful what you say.
They are global snowflakes.
That's right.
Yeah, this is it. Now, obviously, you've got a young family. You've got 2 young boys, 4 and 2, plus your partner Lauren. How's it been for them over these last few years with being overseas, you playing overseas? How's it been as an experience for them, do you think?
Yeah, definitely a challenge, and credit to Lauren because she's been an amazing mum, an amazing wife, and really held us all together, to be honest with you, in hard times for me, and obviously she goes through it all as well. And yeah, the boys they're so strong and they adapt to anything, it seems, and as kids generally do, whatever situation they put in, they tend to react and adjust, and they've done pretty well. So we're pretty blessed in that sense that the boys have, took to it like a duck to water, as they say, and really embraced life over there. And it's good for them. We've kind of looked at it on a positive note and said that when they're older, it's something for them to look back on, and they won't remember much of it, but what an experience to say that they've lived in Asia
Definitely
at such a young age and experienced different cultures, and that's what it's all about. But I guess, yeah, when it's hard sometimes when you're having a bad day at training or a bad week or whatever, or the results aren't going, it's hard then to go home, and as it is for any footballer or athlete, to not bring it home with you when you know that it's hard for them also, and we haven't got the network around us there that we do back in Perth with grandparents and friends, and that's what it's generally been like for the last 4 years. So
yeah, Dad can't get away with being grumpy, really.
That's right. Yeah.
This is it. Because I remember when you first went over to Korea, I remember we had a few WhatsApp chats, and I think you were doing it fairly tough when you first got there because the family hadn't come over with you, and I think you were on your own it looked like a very high tower block.
That's generally how we've gone about it over the last 4 years. Because of the weather over in Asia, it's so cold in the winter months. I go early in January, say, a little earlier this year, and then we'll stay there for 3 months as the team travels around and goes from different venues, trying to find suitable weather to prepare for the season. And then Lauren will bring the boys over, which, if anyone's done, travelling with two toddlers is not an easy feat. So yeah, that's how we've kind of done it over the last few years, and that'll follow again this year.
Because I know after that, that challenging start at Pohang, I mean, certainly on the pitch, unbelievable time, AFC Champions League final, scoring in last minute of a semi-final in an all-Korean derby. When you look back on that period, what are your main kind of takeaways from your time in Korea?
I'm glad I stuck with it. And football, a lot of it is a lot of people will say it's all about luck at times, and I'm a big believer of that. I mean, you have to put yourself in a certain position to generate that luck. But one thing I've found that it's all about timing and being in the right place at the right time. And like you said at the start, when I first signed, I got injured on my debut, injured my foot pretty bad, which I thought was going to rule me out for the season, and it might have been done and dusted, and they would have put the recycling emojis up on Instagram when I was coming back to the A-League, as they always seem to do. But just on that though, I found whilst I've been in Asia, that every club there, so there's only 12 teams in Korea, every player has played for maybe 5 or 6 clubs, so it's not just the A-League where players are recycled. It happens everywhere.
100%.
But yeah, going back to my time early on there, the injury, going through that straight away was tough, and when I first got injured I was on my own, so it was a very challenging first few months, and I was getting pressured from people up above and my agent asking me when I was going to be back, and really I didn't have an exact time scale, but ended up coming back halfway through the season, and like you said, the end of that first year really set me up, qualifying for the final of the Champions League, which was probably, in terms of football, probably one of the best experiences I've ever had, even though we lost.
Absolutely, yeah, because it was over in Riyadh, wasn't it, against Al Hilal?
Yeah, and crazy times as well with it during COVID, and obviously a lot of travel restrictions and quarantine throughout leading up to that final, going to Japan and Thailand, and it was crazy times.
No, it was. I'm just getting ready to putting a note to myself to get ready to post the recycled emoji when you re-sign for us in 2026. So I'll just note that down now.
Can't wait.
All right, let's talk about your time at Glory. We're going back to 2015. You'd been over in the UK. You'd been at Portsmouth and Macclesfield and Stoke as well, amongst others. And what was the thinking behind coming back to sign? And Kenny was in charge at the time, so I imagine he was involved in it. Just talk us through that process, if you would.
Yeah, I guess it's a dream of many kids at a young age that they want to go over to England and play in the Premier League and play for a big club, and if you can do it, fair play. I got to the point at 19, 20 where I had the realisation that I'm maybe not ready for that. It might come, it never did, and I'm not ruling it out, it still might come, but I was just at a point there in my career early on where I don't regret anything in my career, any moves I've made. Going to Stoke, I jumped at it at the time with it being a Premier League club and thinking there was pathways there into the first team, and soon after arriving I realised that there's a manager here in Mark Hughes who's not really interested in, and didn't really have a track record either of playing younger players as such. Didn't. So I found out pretty quick that it was going to be an uphill battle to try and break into the first team there, and I went on loan and went to Macclesfield in my second season there and loved it, playing non-league football with senior players in a great dressing room was amazing, and I had the option to stay, but I felt that even at that age, like 19, 20, how well I'd done, I was a little bit better than that level, and I wanted to aim for more. And at the time, the A-League had a very good reputation, and there was still a lot of big names within the league, and it was always going to again be a challenge for any young player to break into any team in the A-League. There was a lot of players who played in Europe and Socceroos and other internationals playing within the league, and obviously Glory had gone through. I think you've gone through it in the intro, all the turmoil that the club's kind of gone through over recent years. That was one of them. After the salary cap scandal, as they call it, and Kenny rang me up whilst I was back in Perth.
So you'd have known Kenny already?
I knew Kenny from when I was a kid. I came through the system with NTC, so I was playing at ECU Junior Lop and played with the state team. So down those avenues, was coached by Kenny on a regular basis with them. And that was it. He rang me up and asked me. I think he must have been desperate. He must have been. So yeah, rang me up, and we actually went for a coffee at Greens & Co, which is no more. And within 10 minutes, he basically said, "I want you back." And I don't know, maybe that because he asked me so soon to come back, maybe I was wrong to do it. And I could have gone back to the UK, I could have gone back to England and gone on trial at lower league clubs. That was an option, but I chose not to do that. I'd lived five years away from home. I moved when I'd turned 15, I was just turning 16 when I initially left. So I've been away for those years where, I mean, you make a lot of friends leaving school, and I kind of didn't have that. I lost a lot of relationships and things like that between schoolmates, and felt that I needed to come back home to try and clear some of that up and build some of those relationships back up, and I never did. But
still hated in the Perth area,
that's
obviously.
Right. But in the end, I felt that was right, coming home and being with mum and dad and Angus, and
Well, it's just interesting that now as a dad of two young boys, let's say theoretically one of them or both of them, actually get into the game and are good, and they have that opportunity to go to the UK at 15, 16. How hard would that be as a dad, knowing what that experience is like? Admittedly, it might be slightly different now, but it's still, it still has its challenges. How would you feel about that?
I would never say no if that opportunity came about for one of them. Because at the end of the day, you don't know when that opportunity is going to come. It might never come, So for me, if that opportunity is there for them at that age, I'd say take it. And if it works out, it works out. And if it doesn't, it doesn't. There's always that's the way I looked at it. There was always another option. I could have gone back to the UK. I could have gone elsewhere. And I just fancied a change. And that's what suited me. And I'm glad I made that decision.
Well, you were in good company coming into Glory at that time. Castro was coming in, Keel was coming back to the club. Shane Lowry was another one. Tags was there as well. Just take us inside that dressing room. Some strong characters, some big characters in that dressing room. And you were one of the younger ones, I imagine.
Yeah, I was 21. Yeah, 21 during my first season. And to be honest with you, it was only halfway through the season really when Shane and Andy and a couple of other players had signed, and we lost a few players as well. I think Thwaite went to China halfway through the year, and there was a couple of other exits through the door. I think Fernandez, is it Guillaume Fernandez?
Yeah, didn't last long.
No, we were hoping for a few more goals from him, but he never really lit it up, did he?
Just the one, as I remember.
It was, in the shed end, though, at least.
It was. It was. Some misses at that end as well from Guillaume.
There have been a few. Well, that's right. And then we obviously signed Castro. And we all know the story there, and me. So you could say it was a good window in some aspects. But I think he's going back to the personality side and the dressing room itself. The first half of the season was bleak, to put it bluntly. We were bottom of the table, struggling to get results. And I think it was only when really Andy and Shane came in that first year and you felt the shift. Two senior players who'd done it in England. Yeah. People looked up to him as I did, and you definitely felt that shift. And we started picking up results, and that first year managed to scrape. I think we went we set a record. It was something at the time. It was seven wins on the bounce.
That's
or 8
right.
Wins
Went crazy.
Yeah, it was amazing. So it was a good run, and we got scraped into the finals in the end. I think at Christmas we were rock bottom with Adelaide. We played Adelaide at home. And they ended up winning it. They won the grand final. Yeah. They won the A-League Championship, and
it kind of flipped on its head, didn't it?
It did. They went on a crazy run. We went on a run, maybe not as good as them, but it was an interesting one, to say the least.
Oh, on the subject of interesting things, Mark Warren was a part of that squad.
Yeah.
What's your best Wazza story?
I kind of drifted away then.
How was Wazza
I love Wazza. Wazza was a good lad to have, and playing left back. I was playing next to me. He was just a crazy guy, and I felt sorry for him because he got a lot of stick on social media, and people kind of made a joke about him. I think there was a few photos that got circulated, especially one of him,
the motorbike,
on a Harley or whatever it was, in some budgies, and it obviously didn't go down well, did it? But to be fair, I think if you were to go back and watch the games, he put in some good performances, and probably I can't remember. Did he only stay the one season?
Yeah, it's just the one, I think
Yeah.
it was.
He probably earned another year, and I think because I think he went back to the NPL, didn't he? And
He did, yeah. He was kind of like a Ryan Grant before Ryan Grant kind of figure. I always thought a little bit. With
he was solid. Like he did a job, and could whip in a decent ball with his left foot as well. So I felt there was a lot of harsh critics.
Yeah, no, he was a nice fellow. We did a very interesting interview where he really opened up on all sorts of things, and then I wrote it up and sent it through to him because it was a club thing, and obviously wanted to get his approval, and he basically closed down about 75% of it, which was a shame because it was quite raw, a lot of it. I think he's obviously had his issues over the years, but he was certainly a character, as was Kenny Lowe. Now, we mentioned Kenny a moment or two ago. Just give us an idea of what Kenny's like as a coach.
Kenny is a coach. I shouldn't laugh because I have a lot of respect for Kenny, and I think as a coach and as a manager, he did very well at Glory. He got two finals, and obviously didn't. It was 2 finals. Was it 3? 2.
Definitely two.
Finals,
Definitely two. The last season we didn't make it, so.
I mean, FFA Cup finals.
2 of them.
Yes, 2 of them, and he had a good track record in the A-League as well.
He did.
With what he had on offer as well. And I think I was discussing it earlier with someone today, actually, that I think if you do go into coaching, you definitely need to build relationships with players. It's very hard to find that balance. Obviously, I've never been a coach, so I don't know. But from what I've seen in my career, the coaches that tend to do well seem to have that balance of having a good relationship with the players and almost letting the group control and police itself. A lot of the and a lot of stuff that goes on within the dressing room, and then when you go out onto the pitch, you know that it's time to work, and he's the one who's going to set the rules with regards to tactics and how you're going to play and how you're going to go out on a weekend and win the game. And I think Kenny had that balance for a lot of the time. Look, he's a good guy, as everyone knows. Like, he's kind of labelled with that as well, that he is a good guy, and that's honestly the best way of describing him. Like, I can't really fault him in any other way. I think the football we played was good, like very expansive. Yeah. We could have probably been a bit more solid at times. We were a little bit too open, and it always seemed to be us just outscoring teams when we won, or when we lost, we seemed to just get absolutely annihilated and lose maybe 5 or 6-1 or whatever it was. So there was areas of the game and times when I probably got a little frustrated with it, as every player does. But as a whole, the 3 years I was with Kenny, I had a great time. You know. So
how would you contrast him then with Popper, his successor eventually there at the club? What would the differences be in the way they ran things?
Definitely left the players again to police the dressing room and everything that went on in a similar way, and I think that's why they both did well. The difference was with Popper was you always felt like you didn't know whether you were going to play or not. You always felt like you were on your toes. Like, you never really knew whether he liked you. You know, it was just, it was a weird feeling. And I don't know how he does it, but I think it doesn't matter who the player is. Everyone had that sense that, you don't really know if you're going to play this week. Have I done enough last week? Have I trained well? And so there was just always that fear of doubt that kind of kept you going to work harder and to be better, so that you were guaranteeing that spot. And I think as soon as you showed any complacency, he recognised that as well, and I think he was good at that. And then you were maybe on the bench or wherever you were, sat in the stand for a week. That's the only difference. I think there was a bit more leeway with Kenny.
Yeah.
In terms of, especially when I was younger, I look back now of going out after a game and having a few beers. Papa would have no problem with that, but if you were going out to a nightclub or something like that, that was a big no-no. But you knew that. He didn't have to say it, you just knew that
And then he'd have the calipers out for the skin folds on
Exactly,
Monday
and
as
that
well,
was.
wouldn't
But
he?
Kenny did also. They just, both of them just have different personalities completely.
And then I remember certainly at training, Popper and Foxy in particular drilled that back five as it was. Like, I've rarely seen as much repetitive defensive work as they carried out on the training ground. Is that fair?
Without a doubt. I think that's why we were so successful, especially in that first season. Even the second year as well, we carried it on. We were second for majority of the season until COVID hit, and both years the defence was probably the foundation of the squad and the system that we played. And like you said, the repetitiveness of drills, and it just honestly, you would lose in your mind at times. Going, you'd watch the strikers. It'd be like Andy and Bruno, and just they'd be waltzing in on Icon or whatever after training, and you'd be out there for another half an hour, 45 minutes at times, going again. We're doing it again, but it got results, and there's no better feeling than winning. And I've lost. There's a lot more downs in football than there are highs, and for me, if it's a system that works and you carry on and you stick to your values and you do everything right, I never went into a game. That's another difference as well. I never went into a game with Popper with any doubt that we were not going to perform. With Kenny, it was a little bit, is Castro going to turn up today?
Yeah.
If he doesn't, is everyone else going to pull the weight? If not, we're probably going to lose. That's kind of how I went in to games with Kenny. Whereas with Popper, I always knew what I was doing.
Yeah.
I had I knew that the guy next to me knew what he was doing, and so there was never any doubt. And if we lost, we lost. But I knew that everything I had to do prior to the game, and I think that attention to detail was just second to none. Just little things, and every game was different. I remember we played Victory at Amy Park, and we won 3-2 away early on in the season. And there was something about Jason Davison coming into the number 10. Can't remember what was the Kiwi. What's his name? Kiwi Messi. What's his name?
Oh, Barbarouses? No, not Barbarouses.
I lost his name. The one with the long hair, he's got a funny name.
Oh, we'll come back to it.
From Chile or whatever he was. He went on and played in Chile or whatever.
Yes.
You know the one?
I know
Rojas,
you mean. Rojas,
yes,
Marco
that's the one.
Rojas.
I think it was him who was playing at the time, or it might have been someone like Valeri or someone. And he was dropping into the pocket, and I remember they drilled it in before the game that if the ball's on the opposite side, on their left, Jason is to time it to come in and basically smash the 10. And if the ball goes over the top, I'll turn and make it to the winger or the fullback or whoever gets played in behind. And every time Jason was just going in there, meeting him, tackling him, winning the ball, or the ball was getting set back, and I was making it every time and getting the right winger or right back, whoever was receiving the ball. And just little things like that. You knew it was coming, so it just worked. It was just really good to have that in your pocket. You felt almost like you were cheating.
Yes.
At times.
Yeah, like a cheat code.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
And he had you wearing those jackets as well, didn't he? Before they get to come out for games, even when it was like 35 degrees.
Yeah, he was big on that.
That.
Yeah, there was a day in Adelaide, I think it was. It was the Remembrance round or whatever they call it, and it was 30 or 35 degrees, and we kind of stuck with wearing a jacket out onto the pitch before every game prior. So we were doing it again, and when Adelaide look at you and go, look at these idiots with jackets on before the game, they're going to think we're nuts. But it worked. Though. It was just honestly like little things like that people probably don't think of. Just
tiny little
work.
0.5%. Yeah, I've actually got your jacket. You gave me that jacket from that day, which is very kind of you. That's on eBay now. You mentioned, there have been some downs in your career. I remember doing an interview. It was the season after the Premiership win, and obviously your season was curtailed quite severely that year by injury, unfortunately. I remember saying you felt almost that you'd been slightly cheated out of the Premiership yourself, not in a sort of in not in a nasty way, but you just felt that you'd sort of almost been robbed a little bit of that Premiership? It must have been quite painful, that.
Yeah, I guess maybe it was just things I'd done earlier on in my career that was just coming back to bite me like a bit of karma, if you believe in that or whatever. But I guess I sacrificed so much. I changed, like when Popper came in, I changed so much in terms of how I approached the game and as a professional off the pitch as well as on the pitch. So my outlook on things was just changed a lot, and I think I put so much into it working for me that when I saw the results early on, I just had it in my head that this had to continue. And then when it didn't, and I got injured in January, because they kind of, that's it, they got it into my head that, if you do these things, if you apply attention to detail in every aspect, you will see results. And I got sucked into that. But everything that they taught me and everything I did with them, I still do to this day. It was just at that time, I just was so passionate about it and felt like, yeah, this is the thing I have to do. This will get me results. When I did get injured, it was just like getting hit by a bus, and I just couldn't understand why my body had let me down. I was just frustrated with, myself.
Yeah, I remember seeing you in your suit, and it just
didn't feel the same, because obviously in football nobody remembers the beginning of the season. They only remember the end, and we were really good. And that was the other thing as well. Diego, everyone raves on about Diego, and Diego was one of the best players I probably ever played with.
Only played half that season.
But that's it. If you go back to that season, he only played the second half of the season when the results weren't as good as what they were in the first half of the season. So I'm not saying because I got injured, that's the reason why we didn't continue, because obviously we did, and there was a lot of good players within that squad. And I think that's what it was as well, because we had so much squad depth. Players could come in.
That's right.
And going back to being on your toes all the time, because I felt I was playing well and I was holding on to that shirt, it was harder to take when someone came in and you see the team. You still want your mates to do well, but football at any level is a competitive environment, and they're your mates, but they're not your mates. If you know what I mean.
It's strange, isn't it?
It is really hard. You go around playing football and you don't make too many lifelong friends. You meet a lot of nice people, you meet a lot of good guys, but there's only probably a handful in my life that I've held on to throughout my whole career. Whereas other workplaces you can, meet dozens or however many it is if you're a popular guy, and hold on to those friendships. But yeah, football is just, or any sport, I guess, where there's that involved.
It's a very strange profession in a lot of ways. It really is.
Crazy to do it.
All right, mate. Now we've got an exciting feature which I did tip you off about.
You did.
And
you only gave me one. You didn't give me long to mull over it, did you?
No, I didn't. I wanted it to be, I wanted it to be kind of natural and organic. So this is the Dream Car Rental Dream Team. Right, I'm going to ask you to select a couple of rules, not many on this one. You have to select yourself for this six-a-side team.
Okay.
And you have to select a goalkeeper as well. We can't have any of this sort of chance keeper stuff. We're not having that. And ideally, the other players in the team will be players that you played with during your time at Glory. Look, I'll probably let you have Cantona. If you want to have a wild card, you can have Cantona. If you really want to.
I'll stick with players I played with.
But let's put him on the bench. He can be on the bench. Okay. So you've got yourself, obviously. You're in there. You're the captain as well.
Okay.
Who else are you putting in? Who's your keeper? Let's start with that.
Liam Reddy. I only played with two keepers whilst I was at Glory. So I had Ante Kovic in my first year. And my first year set me up, I guess, for the rest of my time at Glory. Because there's not many young, I guess now more so, but at that time I was 21. If you look around the teams in the league, there wasn't many 21-year-old starting centre-backs.
True.
And I played over 20 games in that first season, so I felt like it set me up. Kov was a big part of that because he was a safe pair of hands. He had that experience, won the Champions League, and he was a good guy as well. Bit crazy.
Mad eyes.
Oh, yeah. But all keepers are.
They are.
And he was a good guy and someone who I appreciated looking back now, that he was behind me, and then Liam came in the following season, and I knew straight away that me and Liam would get on. And he's just a big character, and
He is.
And he's a little bit older than me, he'd hate to admit it, but he is, and that's it. That's how it works. And we've been roomies, and he's been a good friend. He's definitely one of those guys who I can take from football and rely on away from the game. And I've got a lot of respect for him. He's a top bloke.
Right,
and a good goalkeeper as well. Don't forget that, because he's another one who, on social media, and he had a few mishaps, and as a lot of keepers do, he got a lot of stick on
he did.
social media as well.
Did.
Probably things that he's done as well before his stint at Glory. He's had a few stints at a few different clubs, and he always used to harp on about how he'd never played for any of the Melbourne teams.
Yeah, that was always a thing. Yeah. I don't know what that was all about either. But all right, so Rocket's in. We've got Rocket, Grant, and then
Lowry.
Shane, big Shane.
Yeah, Shane's another one. Came in halfway through my first year, and Shane's just funny. Like, he just always used to make me laugh. But a solid pro, good footballer, left-footed like myself, and I always looked up to him because he played in the same position. He'd done the business in the UK, and I guess we'd come kind of through the same system. He'd been at ECU when he was younger. I played with his younger brother Ryan. So I had a lot of respect for him when he first signed, and still continue to have a lot of respect for him. And
it's a solid base to this six-a-side team at the moment.
The only issue I have with it is that we're both left-footed, and who would play on the right. And when he first came, he played on the right when we played in a back four with Kenny. I think because I was there first. So he played on the right-hand side, but then the second season when we started playing together, it kind of worked well as well. We never really clashed heads because it always seemed to be that I was injured or he was injured.
Right.
So we never really fought for that left-sided spot, maybe only on a couple of occasions.
Fair enough. Now, bearing in mind this is a six-a-side team, Al, so it's you've got your defensive base, very much midfield. So at this point. You're gonna.
I'm going for a holding midfielder in Neil Kilkenny.
I love the fact you've now got two centre backs and a holding midfielder.
Solid.
Let's keep a clean sheet first.
That's it.
Yeah. What's it? Like, organised fun. That's what we're having here.
That's right. If you
disciplined fun.
At the end of the day, if you don't concede, you can't lose, can you? So
you're putting Killer in.
We're putting Killer in. Another guy came later in my Glory stint, and Neil was one of them, and I think Neil probably will admit this as well, that he didn't come with a bad reputation. There was just a few whispers and murmurs before he arrived that, maybe he's not a great guy, and sometimes you have that in football, but like anyone says, you don't judge a book by its cover, and you hear things. I can only take them off face value, and when I meet people, that's when I'll make the assumption as to whether he's a dickhead or not.
Yeah, yeah.
And straight away it was one of those. It did take a while for me to warm up to him, but I think when you see how passionate he is about winning, then you kind of appreciate the guy behind the footballer. And Killer's a top bloke. I haven't got one bad word to say about him.
Or me.
I learned a lot from him as well. He helped me a lot because he was playing just in front of me. He just won't shut up. And I think that's what it is as well. I think because he doesn't shut up, he just annoys people, especially if you play. He's one of those guys that if you're playing against him, you hate him.
Yeah.
You can't stand the guy. But when you're playing with him, he's great.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
I think Glory fans hated him when he played for Melbourne City because he's just constantly
in the ref's ear all the time. He just knows. He's just got all the tricks of the trade in his locker. He's just got it. And to top it off, he's a very good footballer as well. He's smart on the ball. He just little things, especially in that year when we did win the what do they call it? The Premiership. I always get confused.
Premier's plate, yeah.
It's just little things in games that you won't see. He'll be telling someone to make a run, and he might not even play him, but it just drags a defender away, and then he'll play it over there, and
Well,
an orchestrator. That's what I'll call him.
Absolutely, absolutely was. So there's going to be no shortage of chat. You've got Liam behind you. You've got Killer in front of you. Now you've got how many left? Two spots now. So we're going to need some. We need some flair. We need some goals. Where are you going?
I'm going Diego.
I think
I'd be crazy not to. He's probably one of the best players I've ever played with, and that's even playing in Korea where there's some great players, and even China as well. It's honestly I don't know how Glory found him, but they did very
Amazing.
well. And he's another guy who just doesn't get the credit he deserves in terms of when they talk about. I saw something on like a podcast not too long ago about some guys naming the top 5 all-time A-League players, and I think he came into one of them, one of the top 5. How? I just honestly, if he played at Sydney or if he played at Victory, he'd be top of the list for everyone with what he did.
100%.
I'm blowing a lot of smoke with his ass, aren't I?
But that's all right.
But he was good.
He won't be watching or listening.
Especially
I can
early
guarantee
on,
that.
I think we definitely relied on him a lot to just do something.
All right, so Diego's there. Who's leading the line? Who's getting your goals?
I was tossing up between two. It was going to be Tags or Keogh. And in the end, I went with Keogh. Both very good players. But I just think Andy just had that work ethic that you don't see in a lot of strikers. And his goal record as well. He did, what was it, in the year we won the Premier's Plate, I don't think he took any penalties and still ended up with 16, 17 goals. So he just showed you how good he was in front of goal. He's just, good strikers just have a knack for being in the right place at the right time, and he just had that.
All sorts of goals as well.
Yeah. Like outside of the box, inside of the box, headers, left foot, right foot, it didn't matter. He was a very good player. Probably still is, I must add, because he's not actually retired.
Still going at Guyanilla, yeah.
That's right. So, I think that's a pretty solid team.
I think it's a very solid team.
Very.
There's a lot of, obviously we know Diego's tracking back and so on, perhaps
well, that's it. Andy will do the work, as he did for many years, actually, and Andy will tell you that.
And then Killer will point out to Diego the tracking back that he's not doing as well. So we're covered there. We are absolutely covered there. It's not a bad side. So we're going Rocket Reddy, Alex Grant, Shane Lowry, Neil Kilkenny, Diego Castro, Andy Keogh. Cantona on the bench.
Okay.
There you go. He might get on late. He might get on late. We'll see. In goal. But well, mate, time has just about beaten us. We're just about to wind things up. But thanks very much indeed for coming in. It's been an absolute pleasure.
I appreciate it.
As always, it's from a personal point of view, it's a bit of a shame that you're going back to China, which means I won't catch up with you for a little while. But hopefully you'll be back soon, and I'll start working on that contract for you coming back to Glory in what?
No, thanks
next
very much.
Season.
Cheers. And I'll just say as well, you're a credit to the club.
Oh, mate,
Gareth, and everything you do. You're the reason why I watch the videos on social media. And honestly, mate, I watch them all the way through. And, mate, pleasure. Thank you very much.
Oh, you're very kind. You're very kind. You've embarrassed me now.
I've
lost
but
it.
it's true, mate.
I've
you do a fantastic job. Thank you.
You're very kind. Thanks for coming in, mate. Thanks very much indeed to everyone that's watched and tuned in today. Thanks as well to our official podcast partners, Dreamtel, for their fantastic support. And we will be back with another Glory Stories episode very soon.